Mos pusho së krijuari, mos e ndal ndërtimin tënd. Njeriu është qenie pa kryer. Duhet të mësojmë se kush jemi ne, trupi jon, mendja dhe çka do të thotë të jesh. Vite për mbajtje dhe punë, barabart me një, arritje. Rituals Podcast, vetëm Rituals Podcast. Në të, një jetë për mbajtje, asgjë më shumë. Welcome to the next episode of Rituals Podcast. I will do the introduction in English this time because I don't want to split two languages like the last time when we did the episode with an international. Tonight I have a very special guest for me personally, but also for the world. He is a well-known person in the fitness industry and science industry and everything that is real and true, and he hates bullshit. So, good evening, Dr. Pak. Kalispera ke kalasirtes. How are you?
Carlos Evrika, thank you for the introduction. You forgot to mention a fellow Balkan soldier.
Yeah.
And Balkan culture enjoyer. We can sit here and argue about which country certain food items and drink items truly originated from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually...
Thank you for having me, though.
That should be the topic. We should change the topic, the initial topic. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself so people know how special you are?
Yeah, when you did the introduction, I was like, is there some other guest also joining us? I wasn't sure, but I appreciate the kind words. My name is Pak. My actual name is Patroklos Androulakis-Korakakis. I am Greek, but I live in the United Kingdom. I am a sports scientist with an interest in muscle growth and hypertrophy. Sorry, muscle growth and strength. So hypertrophy and strength. I am a visiting scholar over at Lehman College in New York City, where we do all of our research out of. I've been coaching athletes, powerlifters, bodybuilders, and all sorts of recreational trainees for the past 5 years or so, and currently do content for strongerbyscience.com. Plus, we are, and by we I mean my friend Milo Wolf and I are currently working on an app that is called MyAdapt. And yeah, that's me. I love research. I love all things lifting. And I love being evidence-based about stuff, whatever that
that's
means.
where we're going to start. But prior to that, I just want to add that we met last year in June in Athens when I was attending a seminar where Lane Norton and you were the speakers, and it was one of the best things I've ever been to help me learn so much that is related to my career as well. So it was nice that we became friends there and we started following each other ever since. And I'm very excited for your app because we were about to train. I mean, you were about to become my coach. I was very interested in you training me personally, but due to being very busy, I was like constantly escaping from our call, and then you are about to release your app. So I think I'm going to do it through the app and see what's going to be up there. So evidence-based, that is something that is super often mentioned in the world nowadays. In the beginning, I think we liked it because it was like some kind of a wave against the fads and just the clickbaity stuff. But then the evidence-based itself became a trend, became something very cringy to listen to from everyone. So what do you think about the trend of evidence-based, and where do you think it's leading us in the science world?
Yeah, for sure. So just a very, very quick recap of like what evidence-based means. Many people take evidence-based to mean scientific evidence-based rather than a triangulation of evidence from the science, experience, and one's personal preferences. Exactly as you said, like back in 2013 when I got in the scene of lifting, mostly as like somebody who was following names like Lane Norton and many others, evidence-based was the revolution against misinformation. because people back then were relying mostly on anecdote or their favorite trainers, whatever knowledge, and a couple of books that weren't really based on anything. So it was like an antidote to misinformation. But as with everything, you first have a wave of like, oh, this is this new niche thing that is going against the mainstream. We really like it. Then it slowly becomes the mainstream. Then it's taken and exploited for profit and for people to gain authority. And even though the what should I say, the positive attribute of that thing hasn't really changed, like what evidence-based was back then is still now, but because people take it and abuse it, people that don't know better assume that it's not really what it is, so they then rebel against this sort of imaginary evidence-based bad thing that they have heard from others criticizing. But in reality, we're now at a day and age where we have more information than ever. We have access to really high quality material as it pertains to both exercise, nutrition, even if you're not interested in like becoming super big and super strong. And the sad thing is that there is a push against science and being evidence-based, not because being evidence-based is bad, but rather because people have taken that and exploited it in order to gain authority and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And I think that it's still a little bit better than all the wars that we need to do against the clickbaity stuff in magazines and stuff that's thrown on the internet on different in different websites and different digital magazines. I never knew why are people so drawn to titles and clickbaity stuff and quickly consumed information on social media, and it's very hard to go against the brainwashed. And even though you explain logically and you say that, let's say, artificial sweeteners are not actually gonna kill you, they think that we're the foolish ones and we don't know anything and we're just trying to make content by being very special and saying something against the mass. So how do we actually talk the brainwashed out of the wrong information that's put out there in the world?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's an uphill battle for many of us, especially in our cultures. And I'll like, because I feel your pain, because although I don't live in Greece and haven't lived in Greece for like 17 years, I know, like, I have many friends from multiple Balkan countries, and we are still very much behind when it comes to all things nutrition. So like I still have to talk to people about the fact that, hey, carbohydrates are not going to make you fat by themselves, or you can have a diet drink and it's perfectly fine for you. But in order to combat misinformation, the amount of energy you need to actually dedicate to combating misinformation is so much that, in my opinion at least, it makes more sense to just focus on producing high quality content and spreading the good word, rather than trying to convince those that are already convinced that there's a conspiracy theory and they're trying to poison you or whatever. Not saying that that's completely untrue or whatever, but like, it's more important to focus on getting quality content out there and attracting more people to being truly evidence-based than trying to convince people that often, and that's what at least I see in every culture, but like in Greece, for example, to a greater extent, people there are drawn to authority figures to a great extent. Like, you have like the two doctors that will say this and that, and if you look outside of that country, in the US or whatever, you may see that you have multiple voices, big voices, completely disproving whatever the one voice in a smaller country says. But unfortunately, the only thing we can do as educators is still keep at it and putting out good information, versus specifically trying to convince somebody to change their mind.
Yeah.
In my opinion, at least.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And one of the things that sometimes is a deal breaker is everybody's kind of focused on what the WHO says, and they're like, for example, if I would go out there and say something about whatever low carb diets or, again, artificial sweeteners, they would go like commenting like, come on, the WHO says so, and you're saying so. Like, who the hell are you to say something like, no, they ain't gonna kill you? But then you give them the logical part of like, come on, it's the dose that makes it poison, and you try to explain it, and then sometimes it doesn't work. But anyway, I think that it's gonna come a time where maybe we're gonna have a template where it's gonna be like made like for dummies, where we can teach people how can they understand research papers more rather than read the quick information served on whatever, like, I don't know, Health magazine or New York Times or some kind of a local magazine that just copied that information that was like a mainstream thing and wasn't really verified by people who deal with science in a different way. But one thing that I liked during the seminar is how much we talked about how do we kind of read research paper. What are like some 5 or 6 things that we need to consider when considering a research paper, like its validity?
Yeah, sure, for sure. Like, the thing is, the unfortunate reality is that many people are not equipped, nor do they want or care to read actual research. But when it comes to being critical with information, let's say you see a headline on something that seems either controversial or it seems like either too good to be true. It's not uncommon to see headlines like, "Oh, eating chocolate burns fat," or having a, like, I remember seeing on BBC something along the lines of like, having a hot shower can boost your metabolism.
Yeah.
But before you go directly to the research paper, and I'll get to that in a second, it's important to identify certain individuals online that have the appropriate credentials and expertise that can dissect that information for you. And that's where turning your eye to people like, because like in some countries you may not have those voices, and that's the issue there, but looking for sources, like if there's something big out there, there's going to be people with the appropriate expertise that will critique it and will break it down for you. That's one step where you can be like, okay, let me fact check this, let me shit check it. The other thing is reading the actual paper, and before, like, without reading the introduction or whatever, having a quick scan at the methods, and even taking the methods and throwing them on like ChatGPT or something if it's too scientific for you, so it gives you like a layman overview of what did they do in the study. Because when you hear, oh, they went in the shower and they had a hot shower and burned fat, like what you're imagining, if you don't know better, you're like, oh, somebody went in a shower, they had a hot shower, and then they visually like lost a ton of fat. But then when you look at the actual methods, it may be that, oh, they measured how much fat they burned during the actual shower, and so on and so forth. But most importantly, also looking at the limitations of an actual research paper. It's difficult, and I'm not sure how many people are going to be doing that, but it's extremely important, if you are actually to take that information and apply it to your life, to not just rely on the headline. Because I get it. Look, in today's landscape, the headline is important. Even if you're making really high quality scientific content, people are not going to see it if you don't play the game to an extent. But either go to a reputable individual or team that will break down the information for you and give you all the terms and conditions, or have a deeper look into it and see, okay, what did they actually do here? How did they test things? What are some of the limitations identified on the paper? And that, it may not answer all of your questions, but it will definitely help you get closer to the truth. An example was when they looked at, was it cold showers specifically? And how much more, actually, I don't remember if it was cold showers or cold exposure specifically. But anyways, what was reported is that X intervention will help you burn so much more help you burn more calories if you do it. And then when you actually looked at the details, we were talking about like an extra 15 calories.
Yeah, it was about cold
So-
exposure, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's an example of where you see the headline and it says like, oh, cold whatever helps you burn more, and then you actually double check just quickly the methods and the results and just the limitations, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, it was actually on diet breaks. Aside from cold water exposure, there was a paper on diet breaks where taking some time off your diet led to you being able to burn a bit more calories or lose a bit more fat, but the details were so small in reality that it didn't really make any practical difference. But if you just rely on the headline and you go away with just that, then you're essentially putting stock into something that is not really true, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah. And I think critical thinking is also a very important factor here, even though not everything logical makes logical sense or sound very artistic or poetic is actually true in the science world. For example, there is a very famous trend of charlatans going on internet and saying like, if you can't read the ingredients, then it's not good for you, and then it's going to damage your gut, and then you're going to have a series of autoimmune diseases and all that kind of stuff. And then when people listen to that, they're like, oh, this makes a lot of sense because I can't read the ingredients and there is so much of it and there's a lot of chemicals, and most probably it's so damaging for me long term that we're a part of a system and they are controlling us. And there is like, they go to all the conspiracy theories. And I think that it's actually very hard for the general population to differentiate things. I do feel them, but on the other hand, there's a plethora of things where we can look into and at least get a little bit of a logical sense of what actually makes sense and what is true. I think we should listen a little bit to our gut feeling when it comes to like knowing who's the right person of giving us the information. I mean, I know that I saw many videos. I was wondering like, how do you teach people to detect people who are wrong and all they do is marketing, or they're spreading misinformation? Like, can we get a little bit into that? What are some signs or red flags that that person is wrong to listen to?
Sure. So the thing is that when it comes to anything health and nutrition related, health, exercise, and nutrition related, the answer to being healthy, fit, and living a healthy, like, long life where you're a capable individual, the answer is the most basic, non-sexy thing you've ever heard.
Yeah.
Make sure you're physically active, do some lifting, do your best to eat mostly unprocessed foods, take care of your sleep as much as you can, and that's it. Like everything else, like when we're talking about like supplements or like should I do this type of exercise or the other, all the rest is details. So if somebody comes out there and presents to you that, oh, this is a revolutionary either type of exercise, diet, or food that is guaranteed to absolutely destroy the good old basic everything I just said, that's a big red flag. If anybody's also extremely dogmatic in the sense in how they present things, and they tell you that there's only one way to go about your health, your fitness, your muscle growth, they are likely, obviously, I'm not talking about, basic principles, but rather, oh, this is the program or the diet or the single food that you need to be consuming. It's likely that they're either, being hyperbolic, or they may be onto some BS. Another common red flag is if they're trying to sell you something that relates to whatever information they're giving you. So if you have somebody who's like, yep, this supplement is the best supplement, obviously they may have research to back that up. If they do, great. But again, unlikely that there's anything out there that is game-changing. Not unlikely, there isn't much. So if they're selling you like either their book or their supplement or their training method manual, and it's presented as revolutionary, it's fine to sell things and say, hey, this is a good training program, you're likely dealing with somebody that you should be skeptical of, especially if they're trying to scare you or make you feel that there's a big problem that you have been missing out on all this time. Like, you are unhealthy because of this one food or like this one mistake that you're doing, if that makes sense.
And I would add on to all that, if there is one ingredient, like if they try to sell you or tell you that there is only one ingredient way to something very spectacular and special that you can achieve, or one method of exercising, which is actually somebody gets a method from the whole training aspect and makes it like a sensational thing and gives it a name, and it's like, let's say, Rita or Pak method, and this is a 12 minutes way to get stronger than ever and stuff like that. So, and I've seen that a lot in our industry, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to make people be healthy, but I think there is a lot wrong with fear mongering, and that's the part I hate. So we should try and tell people that everything is fine as long as you're moving and doing your best, as the book for agreement says.
It's true though.
Yeah.
And that's where, but the annoying thing is that people don't want to hear that. Like, you tell them, hey, things are really simple. They're not easy per se, the same way obesity is, like, losing weight is simple in the sense that, like, eat less, but it's like, obesity maybe is not that simple, but like the act of losing weight is simple, but it's not easy. Similarly, like, being healthy, fit, and having enough muscle to be capable and even to have a nice physique by most people's standards, these are super basic things. Like, it just requires some habits and consistency. But people, like, you will tell them, and I can see their faces whenever I do the small talk, and I press the play button on the cassette tape, and I say, hey, just consistently do something. Go to the gym, even if you go once a week, do it for like 5 years, get stronger on a few exercises, walk every day here and there, or do whatever like activity you like. You want to dance, go dance. You want to do cycling, go cycle. Want to do martial arts, do that. Just do something consistently. Make sure you're eating mostly unprocessed foods to the best of your capabilities, even if on some days you're like 60-40. But people are like, you can see their faces where they're like, oh, yeah, true. And like, you can see that it's going through one ear and it's out on the other.
Yeah,
and all they want to hear is that this is the method. You have to do the special method and take the special supplement.
Exactly. Yeah, I see that all the time too. But getting further into the conversation, let's get deeper into the exercise stuff since we're talking about it. Yeah. What's the difference between strength training and hypertrophy, if there is any?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I like that you said if there's any. So obviously, for the average individual who needs to be strong enough to just exist, like existing and being alive, and that really grinds my gears, is not, you don't need to be an athlete to exist.
Exactly.
And if you look at the scientific data on like BMI, visceral adiposity, physical activity, strength, and all-cause mortality, the research simply tells you, hey, just do something and be strong enough. And strong enough you can just achieve with any form of resistance training, as long as you're lifting something relatively heavy. So for general health and general fitness, strength training and hypertrophy training, sure, and we'll get to the differences in a second, they fall sort of under the same umbrella. Just to make sure that you're getting progressively stronger in the like 5 to 20 rep range, and the strength gains that you will get from that are going to be enough for you to be strong enough for daily activities. Now, hypertrophy refers to the increase in muscle size, so it's muscle growth, and strength is multifactorial in the sense that you can work on strength and become stronger without necessarily increasing your muscle size, simply by focusing on things like perfecting the movement that you're trying to get stronger at. So you can learn how to squat every day without necessarily seeing insane gains from a muscle growth perspective, but simply because you are teaching yourself to be better at that movement, and there are neural adaptations that come in play. There are subtle, they're not subtle, there are differences in one training approach versus the other. So if you want to do strict strength training and all you care about is getting maximally strong, that's a completely different world to just getting maximally jacked. But for the average individual, as long as they are engaging in resistance training, they're getting the best of both worlds for what they're after.
Yeah. And I personally love to train my clients, as general population is the most of my clientele. I like to make them focus on strength training. And I sometimes even have programs like there is a plan that they can choose to subscribe to, which is like a 20 to 30 minute exercise. And that's actually the most chosen one because it's based a little bit on snack training, like snack exercising, and it's done wonders with most of my clientele. And I've seen people get really strong, and as a side effect, they get also a very good physique. And it doesn't mean that they look like Olympic athletes or something like that, but they have improved their physique greatly. So I think, in my opinion, I would always give a highlight to strength. Like I would make it a goal for strength to be my prior goal, and then hypertrophy and other stuff can be like playing around when it gets a little bit boring, I guess.
Yeah, it's the reason I like differentiated heavily between the two is because as somebody who works with powerlifters and strength athletes, in my head, if somebody says I want to focus specifically on strength, I'm thinking maximal strength, and more specifically, like usually 1 repetition maximum strength in specific lifts. Whereas for the average individual, I totally agree with you. Like doing something where the performance aspect of training is the main focus is going, because you're not going to be doing like, okay, let's do squat singles now and back off triples, and that's all we're going to do. Like I assume you're doing sets of like 3, 5, 8.
Right.
And focusing on just getting stronger is a great way to get stronger. But also on the back of that, as mentioned, you're also getting all the muscle growth benefits that those people actually care about.
Yeah. And what does the strength training program roughly look like? What do we focus on when we do strength training now, not only with general population, but we're talking athletes and people who really want to get strong at the 1 rep max?
Yeah, so that's where things become a bit more specific and volume. So the amount of training that you do will differ from somebody who wants, like a bodybuilder who wants to get maximally, who wants to maximize muscle growth. So for somebody who wants to get maximally strong on specific lifts, lifting heavier loads is going to be more beneficial for long-term strength development, and at the same time staying at a proximity to failure, staying further away from failure, so from the point where they can't do any more repetitions, is also something that will benefit them to a certain extent. So overall, you have a setup where you're doing specific exercises very frequently because you want to get good at them. You're doing them with heavy loads, and you're not necessarily going so close to failure like you would do with hypertrophy training, because that can be somewhat counterproductive. And overall, you're not performing as many sets. But an individual who comes to me and says, hey, I want to get better at the squat, the bench, the deadlift, the overhead press, and just be as strong as possible, their training will obviously still include some form of hypertrophy training to support increases in muscle mass. But a good amount of their training will be focused on lifting heavy loads, not super far away from failure, but further away from failure than is ideal for hypertrophy. Right. However, it's also important to note that muscle growth is possible on any rep range. So even if you're doing sets of 3, and even if you're not like going to failure and you're like 2-3 reps away from failure, you're still getting muscle growth benefits from those. So your approach for Gen Pop individuals, which sort of like ticks all boxes, yes, it's not maximizing maximal strength to the point where like whatever, you're gonna get the most out of this exercise as you can possibly can, and it's not maximizing muscle growth, but you're getting a really good chunk of both hypertrophy and strength gains, maybe like 70 to 80% of both.
Right. And I guess it's very important to mention the nutritional aspect of all this, getting stronger, because like one thing that I see that people forget to mention and to focus on is that you can train as much as you want, but that's the place where we break the muscles and we kind of traumatize everything in our body in a positive way. And then we need to mix our chemistry with the chemistry outwards, out of ourselves, in order to make ourselves stronger and have a caloric surplus and whatever else is needed to support the muscle growth and sleep, I guess, and have some basics connected to the training, not only training, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, as you said, like we see a lot of these discussions and content out there that focuses on training specific manipulations, with the nutrition side of things not being mentioned because it's sort of taken for granted that, oh, you all know that this is important. But if you're somebody who's just starting and is going to the gym, you need to pay some attention to your nutrition. Now, I'm not saying you need to be a bodybuilder about it, but consuming a solid amount of protein with each meal and being somewhere in the 1.3 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is helpful. It's the most important thing is that you do the training. The training is what will stimulate muscle growth, and then nutrition is, as Eric Helms put it, permissive to muscle growth. Like it will allow, and it can actually potentiate muscle growth to an extent. But keep in mind that as long as you're not in a huge calorie deficit where you're losing a bunch of weight and you're like barely eating, even if you're on maintenance calories and you're doing your best to maintain your weight and, you know, eat as much protein as possible without necessarily counting and doing your best to eat as healthy as possible, it's likely that you're still going to get the majority of your gains. Ideally, though, if you're looking to gain muscle and get stronger, a very slow and conservative phase where you intentionally gain body weight will do wonders, and it will be very beneficial to your long-term strength and muscle development. Gaining somewhere around 0.5 to 1% of your body weight per month can be a great way to do so, and that will require you to eat just a bit more than your body requires, which you can just do by trial and error and just look at the scale and make sure that over time it's slowly going up while you're also hitting new personal records in the gym.
Right. And what are some of the most common strength training myths, like something that you absolutely are tired of hearing in the gym and around it?
Sure. The one thing, and I'm glad that you mentioned Gen Pop, because I do work with a lot of Gen Pop individuals, and I do honestly feel like there's a lot of people out there that will benefit from more information around resistance training, especially in certain countries where it's not common, like even for like women to resistance train or older individuals. The one myth that annoys me is that you must do free weights. Free weights are great. I love deadlifts, squats, overhead presses. But for a lot of people, the process of learning how to do a back squat is intimidating. And in reality, if you just use a bunch of machines and get stronger at like 5 to 6 machines that you like, sure, you may not be getting the absolute most out of every machine versus some free weight exercises, but in principle, they're not going to be that much different as far as your overall strength and muscular development. So if you don't like doing free weight exercises for whatever reason, it's totally fine to just do machines. So that's one myth. The other myth is that you need to get absurdly strong, or you need to spend, like, I'll just tackle this one first. Like that you need to get really strong to actually see a transfer in daily life. Like, look around you. Most people don't lift anything, and they're still alive, and they're still, sure, quality of life may not be ideal, but they're able to walk and pick things up and travel and drive and do whatever. Even just going to the gym like 30 minutes a week or 20 minutes a week. We had a study, I don't know, you remember, but I'll just say it, 20 minutes per week over 7 years in like 15,000 individuals, more than enough for them to see substantial strength increases. And, you know, I like deadlifting and I want to deadlift 300 kilos. Does that really transfer to my daily life versus deadlifting 140 kilos? There's not many chances, many instances where I had needed to pick up like even something that is heavier than 30 kilos off the ground, if that makes sense. And lastly is the idea, and I sort of mentioned it, that you need to be dedicating hours and hours in the gym for it to be worth it. Any amount of resistance training results in like 10 to 15%, 10 to 15% decrease in all-cause mortality. So death from all causes. You are looking, especially for older individuals, increases in bone mineral density. You're fighting atrophy because after a certain age, your body's like, we're not using this muscle, so I'm going to get rid of it now. Yeah, so literally, like, it's so painful. I wish it was complicated because then I would at least be like, I get it, man. Like, you need 3 hours a week in order to see any benefit. Like, I get why people don't do it. But now it's so little. You need to do so little to get so much out of it that it's just, like, it pains me to see people not do it. So especially for anybody who's listening, just do something.
Exactly. Not to go from one extreme to the other. And especially this is very valuable for older individuals. Like for like about 2 months or something, I made my parents come to the gym once a week, and they were feeling great doing something once a week. So that eventually increases itself, by the way. After 6 months, they start coming like 2 times, and then maybe they start liking it more and they come 3 times. It's just like it. I don't know why do people always try to go from like sleeping to running a marathon and they don't enjoy the process in between. I think it's the greatest battle in humanity to balance things off. But yeah, I think it's very valuable what we're talking until now, because it will calm down a lot of people who are anxious from all the information that's out there, I think.
Yeah, and it's the same with everything else. With sleep as well, as long as you're not sleeping 3 hours a night and your sleep is relatively consistent, even if it's lower than what you may have heard, you're still likely to be fine. Just to make sure that you're hitting, like you're moving enough and you're doing some lifting. And just do it for the rest of your life. You'll be surprised.
What's the most overrated variable for muscle growth?
That's a loaded question. The most overrated variable for muscle growth is, let's see, one variable. So there's a lot of pressure. I'll we'll call it one of the.
Yeah.
I would say exercise technique to an extent, at least the way people think about it, where they're like, oh, I need somebody to show me the good form. And like, it's obviously important to know a few basic things, but like, again, going back to using machines, if you're the average individual watching 2 or 3 videos, it's really not rocket science, and it's a few very basic things that you need to be doing. And even if you don't perfectly adhere to those, you're still going to get the majority, if not all, of the benefits from lifting. Obviously, I'm somebody who lifts with good or strict technique and advocates for strict technique, but I think people hear technique and they assume that is this like thing you have to master over years, where yes, if you're learning how to clean and jerk, sure, or like how to back squat, but for the majority of people out there that just want to go to the gym, it's like a few basic boxes that you need to tick. And even if you deviate from those, as long as you're consistent and you are aware that, hey, your body's supposed to be moving, and it's fine if like you move a bit like this or you do something that is not textbook, I think that's a very like somewhat overrated variable for muscle growth.
And what about the fight between full range of motion or not, and lifting to failure or not, and stuff like that?
When is this episode coming out?
Tonight.
Because tonight.
No.
Then I can't reveal top secret information.
Okay. No, not
so
tonight.
Look, it's the same as saying, let's say you're into cars, right? And you're like, which fuel should I get, or which like downpipe, whatever exhaust system should I get in order to improve my traction and improve my whatever 0 to 60 or my track time? Like those details matter for the freaks.
Yeah.
In terms of like, in general, when it comes to range of motion, as long as you're not skipping the stretch completely, even if you don't maximize it, it's likely that you are not missing out on many gains. It doesn't make sense to skip it, but like even if you just do exercises as they're shown in a book, so like on a bench press, you come down, you go up. On a lat pull down, you come down, you go up, and you don't necessarily try to get a bit more of a stretch. It's really, really not a big deal. And if you look at the scientific evidence, like that's what our meta-analysis even says. It says you can adopt the viewpoint that range of motion overall, the effect is not going to be anything crazy. If you're a freak who like you want to make sure that you're getting everything out of your lifting, sure, that extra stretch or that emphasis may give you that extra bit, maybe. But at the same time, it's not a big deal. Same with training to failure. Training close to failure is important. That's non-negotiable. Like you have to be close to failure in order to make big muscle gains and continue to do so. But even if you're away from failure, as long as you're not like 10 reps away from failure, you're still going to make gains. However, I do think that for people who are not doing a lot of exercise and who are not doing a ton of lifting, taking quite a few of their sets to failure is a surefire way to make sure that, hey, I'm not only getting all the muscle growth benefits out of these sets, but potentially some of the cardiovascular adaptations as well, and that I am truly like close to failure. Because even if you're above 12 reps, the literature shows that things can become a bit sketchy, and you're feeling like a burn, and you're like, yep, close to failure, but in reality, you're like 10 reps away.
Yeah. What should we focus on to design a simple program for ourselves? Like, let's say somebody who doesn't know how to design a program or can't afford a personal trainer, wants to go to the gym, they don't want to get lost. Because quite frankly, going to the gym alone is a little bit intimidating because you're kind of lost. And I love to tell people how to design a program. So what would you say?
I would say that preference is important, and as long as you're taking basic principles, which you will be, do something that you enjoy and that it fits within your schedule. The rest is not a big deal. Either like get some pre-made programs from like influencers that you trust, or like free programs that exist out there. Like I've released a bunch of free minimum dose programs, and I'm sure you have put something out there. But if you just want to go to the gym and you don't want to even do that, pick a few exercises that target each muscle group, like your back, your quads, your hamstrings, your chest, your shoulders. Pick 1 to 2 exercises that you like, even if they don't like fully target that muscle group. So like it could just be like a lat pull down or like a seated machine row for your back. Pick those couple exercises and do 2 to 3 sets of 5, I'd say, to 12 reps per week, very close to failure on those, and just do your best over time to add a bit more weight, get an extra rep. And occasionally, when things feel like you've been stuck for a while and you have the time to do a bit more, add an extra set here and there. Do that for the rest of your life. Change exercise whenever you're bored. Pick new challenges for yourself, and you're covered. You're going to gain plenty of muscle, plenty of strength, and you're going to get all the health benefits from resistance training, which max out at like 60 minutes per week anyways.
True. And to get a little bit more specific for the ones who are like between totally beginner and advanced, like what do we need to remember in terms of progressive overload and something that you love to talk about. Do we need deloads?
Yeah, so like progressive overload, some people like take it to mean like, oh, every time I'm in the gym I gotta be adding weight and weight and weight, and it's like over time. And that's where staying at those lower rep ranges may help, because you can be pretty accurate at knowing whether you're close to failure, and you will be lifting heavier. And for some people, it can be a bit more fun versus doing sets of like 20 to 30 reps. Anyways, do your best to do a bit more here and there. It won't be every week after a certain point, but like do your best to beat the previous week's performance and have some idea of where you started on every exercise, and just make sure over time that that's improving, either by adding an extra rep or a bit of weight or eventually an extra set. It's as simple as that. You don't need some fancy progression scheme. And if you're doing your due diligence outside of the gym and you are sleeping okay and eating okay, you will see that you will naturally progress. But keep in mind that at some point things slow down, unless you then gain a bunch of body weight and go on like a big bulk or something like that. You are not going to be able to add weight to the bar forever. And if you reach the point where then you're like, oh, now my enjoyment from the gym comes from like my bench going up or my shoulder press or my whatever going up, then it may be worth thinking about like programming a bit more and like having more planned out sessions and so on and so forth. But progressive overload is really not rocket science. And as far as deloads go, like, though that's I think overrated. I should have said deloads for muscle growth. If you see that, it's been like 2 weeks, you're feeling tired, sore, your performance specifically, because you can feel tired, and you as somebody who lifts and who's been active for a big part of her life, there's days where you feel like absolute shit, and you go to the gym and you're like, oh, great, PR.
Yeah. Happens many times,
So,
by the way.
Yeah, and I bet it happens with your clients as well, where they
Right,
tell
yes.
you, the week, it's been slow thus far, and you're like, okay, we're going to push it until the end of the week, and before you know it, end of the week, boop, they feel great again, and then they do another 5 weeks before they need a deload. So when it comes to deloading, if you see that your performance in the gym has taken an actual hit for like a continuous week or even 2 weeks, then take a step back, either take a week off or just take it easy for a week, go a couple of times, do a bit of light training, move around, and then get back to it again. Or if you know that, hey, got a cruise, a holiday coming up, train hard and maybe take the time off there. But some time off the gym is not going to do anything as long as you're not taking a week off every 3 weeks.
Right. Can we have steroid-like gains without steroids?
No. So you can't, unfortunately. I wish we could, but like the bit of research that exists on the topic that I used to hear about all the time on the placebo effect, when you look closer at that research, you realize that, there's so many limitations here that even that sort of research you can't take really too seriously. So we have like a couple of studies where people were told, hey, you're taking steroids, go ahead and train. I'm not going to bore you now with all the details. And they went and trained and they saw big strength gains. But at the same time, we are talking about people that, the researchers at the time didn't control for their nutrition, the training they did. And at the same time, we are talking about very small samples. Plus, they didn't measure muscle growth. So maybe they did train a bit harder, paid more attention to their sleep and nutrition. But that goes to show that, hey, whatever you're doing, placebo yourself. Tell yourself, hey, I'm walking, I'm lifting, I'm eating healthier. It's going to be great. I'm going to make really good gains. I'm going to get fitter, and just believe in the process, trust the process, do the work, and it's likely that the combination of those things is going to lead to favorable results. And if you believe it even more, it may be that you're a bit more on point with your training and good things happen. But no, unfortunately, you can't say I'm taking steroids, and then all of a sudden start growing like if you were
Yeah.
taking steroids?
I noticed your face, like your facial expression when I asked the question, because it's something interesting in my culture. Taking steroids is like, or just mentioning steroids is like talking about vitamin C, like being roided up is quite a trendy thing around here, and
Yep.
I feel that's a little bit sad considering the fact that it shows a lot about how obsessed people are with physical appearance, and they quite obsess over details, and they feel judged, and they feel like and many people have asked me, I've even had clients trying to push me into uh, pushing them into steroids, and for me it's a big, it's like it's not a crime, but it's like like I don't even want to talk about it for general population and people who want to get their summer body with anavar and stuff like that. It's like a bit, it sounds a bit tragic, you know. So
It is.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
um
I see it a lot. Sorry,
yeah,
let
no,
me
no, yeah.
very quickly yap on that, because
Yeah.
it's exactly the same in Greece to an extent, where it's like, oh yeah, I took Anavar and Deca, yeah, and you like for people that are not lifters, they're not like gym rats, who like everybody's entitled to do whatever they like, right? And
Yeah.
I get that for people who live and breathe muscle growth, taking steroids can be an interesting journey or an experience in their life, and fair enough. I don't get it. If you're a recreational lifter, I don't understand steroids. But the idea that you going on steroids is going to dramatically like enhance your, I don't know, how people view you, or it's gonna open many doors, and going to the beach, and like nobody cares, bro.
Yeah.
Really. Nobody cares.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's the in our culture, in Balkans culture, social media, like in the whole world, but especially in Balkans culture, social media, especially around summertime, is quite a focus in people's times, like posting the pictures on the seaside, and even like people from Kosovo, like going to Greece, like whatever, Mykonos and Santorini photos and everything, like in you know, in bikini and stuff like that. It's a quite a sad loop of being stuck into the circuitry of the dopamine rush that everybody needs to get for like a few hours. And if we tackle their critical thinking about their own selves, it's like you're doing that, you're taking steroids to have some pleasure of a few hours, and then the next day it's just gone and unimportant, like whatever post you made or whoever saw you for a glimpse of a second. And even if you want to get girls or boys, you're kind of like faking it the way you want them to view you. So as real as it gets, is the better.
Yeah, it's not like, the funny thing is that people will see you looking, I don't know, more muscular and whatever, but in our culture as well, you know that they will see you and they will say, yeah, he's probably on steroids.
Yeah.
Or,
Exactly.
like you'll flex the car, and even if you do, if you did get the car because you did the work or whatever, the thinking is still going to be, he probably, like, it's not
Yeah.
his, or like he has money from his family, or
Right.
yeah.
That's how you lose respect, actually. Okay, so you talk about minimum effective dose training. I love that. Can you tell me a little bit of that? I think we mentioned it through here and there. We talked about snack training and the importance of just doing something, but maybe get a little bit deeper into your philosophy of minimum effective dose. What is it?
Sure. Yeah, it's the same as with like medicine or many other fields. Like, what's the least you can do in order to get a meaningful response? So that response will depend on your personal goals. But like, I'm in the process now of writing a book on minimum effective dose training for strength and hypertrophy. And the way I've sort of conceptualized it is like, you have different categories of individuals, like your Gen Pop individual who just wants to get bigger, get a bit bigger, a bit stronger, look good by general standards, doesn't care to be like a freak beast about it. And then you have your more advanced individuals that go to the gym and do care about like, oh, are my delts proportional to the, I don't know, my upper chest or whatever. But overall, the current literature on both strength and muscle growth, with the latter slightly changing, shows that with a few and as low as like 5 direct sets per muscle group per week, you can get a whole lot of your gains. You're not gonna get the maximum you can get out of training, but if you go to the gym and you do 5 sets for chest, 5 sets for quads, 5 sets for triceps, for biceps, and so on and so forth per week, and you like really focus and make those sets count, it's likely that you're getting the majority of your potential gains. And for strength, you may be looking at like up to 80%, 85% of your potential gains. And this sort of approach, for some people that are experienced lifters, is a good way to work around, limited time availability and so on and so forth. But for the average individual, they can train like that for the entirety of their life and be miles ahead of the average person who doesn't lift.
Right. And is there something that's killing our gains? Like, what's killing our gains? What are the 3 most important things on retaining muscle or gaining muscle?
Yeah, and this is where people will be like, why am I hearing this again? It's like, consistency is number 1. Like,
yeah,
even if you do push-ups and pull-ups at home, and you do that for the rest of your life, and you're challenging yourself, you're going to be, your upper body at least will look great.
Yeah.
And you will be very strong for general standards. Consistency is 1. Intensity of effort is the second one. So how hard you train. Because sure, like for our parents or like, uncles or whatever, just going to the gym and doing some lifting will be, and for everyone, it will be better than nothing.
Right.
But when it comes to like actually getting the most that you can out of resistance training and gaining muscle, because you asked for muscle growth specifically, you have to push yourself. You can't work around that. So just going in, getting a sweat and getting like a little pump and I felt the burn and I was a bit sore the next day, that's fine. You're still doing something. But what's killing many people's gains is the fact that they're not truly working close to failure. And I've seen that even in like people who are supposed to be advanced trainees, as a coach, like working with many people. It's something that I'm shocked by how far from failure people train. And you asked for a third one.
Yeah.
Third one could be not paying enough attention to the nutrition side of things, because as much as you can gain muscle without necessarily caring that much about nutrition, there will come a point where you gotta do that year or 2 where you slightly gain weight and push yourself hard, and slightly gain weight and push yourself hard. And I feel like a lot of people fall in the trap of gym equals 6-pack. So it's like gym and calorie deficit, and it's just like a vicious cycle of losing weight, then like, oh, life happens, they give up, they get back in the gym, they lift, but they are losing weight again, and it's like, and they never change.
Yeah, that's where I was coming to. Like, can we chase 2 rabbits at once? Like, let's say gain muscle and lose weight at the same time? Is that because a lot of people like to do that?
Yes, but it's, I think what people have in their head, and that's what I had when I started lifting, is like when they hear burn muscle and burn fat and gain muscle at the same time, they think, whoa, I'm gonna be looking at my body and it's like body fat melting and muscles popping out. If you're a beginner, you can, even if you're losing weight, you get in the gym, you can lose fat and build an appreciable level of muscle at the same time. And that's one of the very few times where you can do that effectively. If you're obese, maybe you can burn fat and gain some muscle, but chasing 2 rabbits at the same time, unless you have some fucking extreme rabbit chasing machine that can do that, and but unless you have that, it's gonna be more of like an uphill battle where you're not gonna get the best of any world. And sure, like you're still lifting, it's still great for your health, and you're still gonna make some gains. But like if you really want to lose fat and you've been training for some time, just lose fat. Spend the 3 to 4 months calorie deficit, push it hard. You may gain a tiny bit of muscle, but even if you don't, it's not a big deal. And then if you want to gain muscle, slow, conservative, nice and slow calorie surplus. Give it time. Happy days.
Very nice. Do we miss a lot? Do we miss on a lot if we do resistance training without cardio? Health-wise.
If we health-wise, yeah, that's what I was gonna get to. Like, because people define cardio as like vigorous cardio. If you're not doing anything and you're just going to the gym and lifting and you're very sedentary outside of that, yes, you do miss out on potential health benefits. But if you're walking outside of the gym and you're relatively physically active and you're hitting somewhere around 8 to 10,000 steps per day, even if you're hitting, let's say, 6 to 10,000 steps per day, and you're lifting multiple times per week, it's likely that you're taking a lot of boxes as far as your health goes. Now, there's people that will tell you that you have to train in a specific intensity zone to reap the majority of health benefits. But the reality is that if you're physically active and you're hitting like 300 to 600 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, like walking, you're looking at like maximally reducing the risk of all-cause mortality as it pertains to aerobic exercise. However, doing cardio can be much more efficient than relying solely on walking and can fit with a lot of people's busy lifestyle. So if you're somebody who has a job, has a family, and you can't really ensure that you're getting the steps in every day and you're moving around because you have to sit at an office, doing a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours of more intense cardio like cycling, running, swimming, whatever you like,
right,
it does give you an extra benefit in addition to resistance training. So those two things combined is ideal. If you had to pick one, and you don't, but if you had to pick one, I would go with resistance training, because you can make resistance training into a slight form of cardio as well with some adjustments and get the muscle benefits from it.
Right. What are the top 5 exercises for you if you had to do them for the rest of your life without changing anything?
Top 5 exercises.
Or top 3.
For me personally,
for you personally.
or for somebody that I would recommend?
For you personally.
For me personally, I love...
We know that.
Deadlifts. I love deadlifts. I used to love squats. I was a big fan of squatting to the point where I would just squat some weeks. I just love the feeling of like a hard set of squats. I loved. Now anymore, I don't. I love overhead pressing. I love lat pull downs for some reason. I love training my back. And push-ups, deficit push-ups. I don't know. Like, I just love lifting.
It's weird for a
the
Balkans,
act of lifting itself.
For a Balkans boy, not to mention something chest-related. Very impressive. Because
I mentioned push-ups, though.
Yeah, okay, push-ups. But like everybody in Kosovo likes chest press, so it's like they can't wait for a chest press day.
Yeah, I was blessed genetically. I mean, I train my chest pretty hard, but I never liked benching. So, yeah, unfortunately, I'm an exception. The Balkan boy that escaped.
Yeah. So, is there any difference between men versus women training? Like, what are the training differences between men and women? And maybe what
I want to make jokes now,
yeah,
but I'm not.
Do make jokes. That's why I'm asking you these things.
Nice try, Matrix. You see, that's how they try to trick you.
Yeah.
They make you relax, and they make you feel like we're Balkans. You can make jokes, and that's how they get you. But no, joking aside, that's one thing I hate a lot, and I hate the fact that resistance training is not like. I hate that women don't lift weights or are intimidating to lift weights because of men making it seem as if they have to do things differently. Aside from some very minor changes to like maybe training volume, and that's with a big question mark, women should be lifting like men and men should be lifting like women, in the sense that women shouldn't be, obviously, okay, terms and conditions apply, like you and I having a fist fight, you're good at boxing, actually, you may get a couple of punches in, like there are differences and so on and so forth. But when it comes to treating women as like frail or fragile in the context of resistance training, I'm not a big fan of that. Like, women should still lift heavy, push themselves hard, and not be treated as like, oh yeah, you have to do the small dumbbell booty band workout because you're a woman, and lifting proportionally heavy to you is bad because, like, obviously you're not going to lift the same weight as a man, simply because he's stronger in an absolute sense, but relative to your body weight and strength standards, you should be pushing yourself the same way as a man. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah, and it's crazy how in our culture, I mean, in Kosovo at least, the majority of women are still very much scared of getting bulky because of like training hard. And it's crazy. Not understanding this drives me crazy. So can you explain, please, why? Because today I'm enjoying it. I'm just asking questions and somebody else is speaking my mind. This is
rapid
great.
fire. Yeah, it's like the analogy like people give, but it's still like they hear it and they don't think about it. It's like me saying, yeah, I'm not gonna work much because like really don't want to have to deal with like the millionaire problems and have too much money. Yeah. So it's like, look, I get that there may be like a couple of women out there that are genetic freaks and they do respond extremely well to lifting, and maybe they're actually gaining too much muscle too quickly, but those are going to be huge exceptions, and the same exists for men. Right. The idea that women will get too muscular is like a blatant lie, especially if you don't intentionally spend years and years of your life training in order to get more muscular. And it also pains me when I'm back in Greece. I mean, it happens in the UK as well, but I see it in Greece more often. When you see women like being trained and the workout is like a glorified low-intensity cardio session. Lift weights, if you're not intentionally bulking and gaining a ton of weight, the worst case scenario is that you gain a bit of muscle and you look more toned, even though I hate that word.
Yeah, me too.
And that's about it.
Exactly. Right. And we don't have the hormonal picture needed to get as bulky as men do when they train. So that's another thing. Like, we can't ever get as big as you, for example.
Yes, but like even with men as well, do you not see men around you or in the gym? Like, do you go to the gym and you're like, whoa,
exactly,
here come the mass monsters. Like, yeah, you'll get a couple of dudes that are pretty built, but like, why do you think men consume all this information and there's a scene for us to make a living? Like, if every man out there went to the gym and got huge just by lifting, like, there wouldn't be an issue. The majority of men that you'll see in commercial gyms, at least, like maybe not bodybuilding gyms, you're looking at you're not looking at mass monsters, and sometimes you're looking at people who don't even look like they lift that much.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, true. And I think the menstrual cycle thing has been debunked like by science. It's not true. Like the follicular phase and all that stuff. You're stronger this phase, you're weaker that phase. Is it so or not?
So yeah, obviously not first-hand experience, although 2024, if I wanted to, I could have it, or I could say I had it or something. But joking aside, it's important, like, cool, because like as a man giving advice on the menstrual cycle, I understand, out of my lane here. However, if you look at the data does.
You're a secret gynecologist. Don't hide it anymore. That's your second job.
That could be some like very cringy pickup line. I feel there's something there, but I cannot come up with it now. Yeah. But it's like, if you look at the data at the moment doesn't support that different phases of your menstrual cycle are inherently going to make or break your gains, or that you should buy into cycle-specific programming, because some coaches will tell you, hey, we need to plan things around your cycle, so because the hormone there, like when that goes up, you need to be doing this, and then we need to be doing that, and that's why you need to pay me money. However, we must not discount, and that's where being evidence-based comes in the picture, we must not discount the personal experience of each woman when on their menstrual cycle. And if you look at data where they've surveyed high-level athletes about their different phases of their menstrual cycle and how it impacts their training, there are, many of them saying that, oh, this phase I feel more tired, or this and that. So, but instead of having a preset approach and saying, no matter what, when I'm in this phase, I will do this. Like, if you're feeling good, go ahead, push yourself. You're still going to make great gains. If you feel like you need a day off, or you go to the gym and everything feels heavy, adjust accordingly. But just, that's it. Be flexible.
What about the recovery trends and myths that you need to have a sauna home and have a ice bath, whatever, expert counting the seconds for you, or how long are you staying in the cold, and the new trends of biohacking and some kind of magic pills for longevity and all that
I get the
stuff.
appeal.
Yeah.
I get the appeal, and I spilled a lot of my soft drink on me. I don't know if you saw. It was I tried to do a joke and just spilled it. So this is who you have talking here, guys. This is who you should trust. The guy who can barely drink from a can. I'm trying to somehow hide it now, so I'm just going to sit lower.
It's not. We can't see it. But
It's natural.
I think it was the question that triggered you.
There we go. It's sugar-free, though. That's the good thing with sugar-free drinks. Little parenthesis is like when you spill it, you're like, oh, it's not going to stick. Anyways. So recovery methods. Again, I get the appeal. And I get the biohacking appeal. I understand why people like it, especially following certain individuals that give you this feeling of like pseudo deep dive where you're like, whoa, I now know more than the sheep out there. I have this special knowledge that the average person doesn't have, and I'm taking ashwagandha. I love ashwagandha, great for stress and blah, blah, or whatever. Like, I'm taking the supplement they don't know about, but I know about it because I heard the podcast. However, again, and unfortunately, because like we would love for it to be the one recovery method. Recovery methods like sauna is fine. And it can, like, if you're an athlete, there's things that you can get out of it. Similarly with cold water immersion, although not ideal for somebody looking to maximize muscle growth. And that's assuming they're doing cold water immersion or cold baths every day, which most people don't. But like, it can help you decrease soreness. And let's say you're an athlete and you have multiple training sessions every week, and you got to go from session 1 to session 2, and you're super sore and that affects your session. Yes, cold water immersion can help. But overall, your stress management outside the gym and your nutrition and your sleep are the most important things, and the rest is just icing on the cake. So if sitting in the sauna helps you relax and you're there and you're like, cool, I'm meditating, I'm calm, sauna, placebo, it's going to be great. That by itself is you relaxing, which helps. But the idea that you need to be spending a ton of money on sport massage, on cold water immersion, on cryotherapy, on foam rolling, or you have to have like this recovery toolkit, is not really based on much.
So to recap this whole thing, what really makes you well-rounded, like holistically well, between the old school advice and the hyped up, trendy, fancy, modern advices that we have all over us?
Training hard. So that's like, if we look at the Venn diagram, like training hard, pushing yourself hard. I assume we're talking about everything, right? Not
everything.
Just recovery methods.
Literally everything.
Yeah. So training hard is something that will holistically improve both muscle and strength, and but also like health outcomes. Consistency, which was a big thing even in the more old school days or whatever. Paying attention to basic principles above everything else, but at the same time, and that's where the newer sort of generation of like lifters and people who consume evidence-based information comes in play, is being open to changing your mind and open to new information, but at the same time understanding that science has shown and is continuously showing us that things can be very flexible. So instead of treating science as a rigid thing that will give you this one specific answer, understand that being evidence-based and science-based has actually shown us that, hey, there's many ways that you can approach health and fitness. Make sure those basics that I just mentioned are in place. And whether you do exercise A or exercise B, or you work out in the morning or at night, science is continuously showing us that those things don't seem to make a huge difference as far as overall health gains. And yeah.
Right. Okay, Pak, I'm really grateful for you taking your time to be with me, and big love from Pristina. I can't wait to see you in person, and I can't wait to train with you and your app when it's out. I signed up for it today, so
thank you.
do
We'll add you to the beta users, and thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate all you do for the Balkans and for the world.
Thanks a lot, and see you next time. Thanks for being with us in this Rituals episode, and I'll see you in the next one.